The crystal chandelier cast dancing light across the packed reception hall as Ronan Hayes adjusted his tie and watched his wife work the room. Laura moved between guests like she owned the place, her laugh carrying over the music as she charmed another group of Myra's friends. The bride herself, Mira Vaughn, held court near the gift table in her $1,000 dress, accepting congratulations with the grace of someone who expected them. Ronan sat at table 6 with his son Beau, cutting the boys' chicken into smaller pieces. The 5-year-old had been quiet all evening, his dark eyes tracking the adults around them with an intensity that sometimes worried Ronan. Tonight, that intensity felt different. "Dad," Beau's small hand gripped Ronan's forearm. "Let's go home. Right now." The urgency in his son's voice cut through the wedding chatter. Ronan set down his fork and studied Beau's face. The boy's jaw was tight, his eyes darting toward the dance floor where Laura swayed with one of Myra's college friends. "What's wrong, buddy?" Beau leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You didn't look under the table, did you?" The words hit Ronan like ice water. His engineer's mind immediately cataloged possibilities, but something in Beau's expression told him this wasn't a child's game. Ronan glanced around the table, then slowly bent forward as if picking up his napkin. Under the white tablecloth, illuminated by the phone screen, sat Lara's iPhone. The device was propped against the table leg, clearly recording. But worse than that, text messages filled the screen. Ronan read them twice to make sure his eyes weren't playing tricks. "Laura, he's drunk. After tonight, I'm done pretending. Unknown contact. You sure about this? No going back once we start. Laura, I've been pretending for months. I can't do it anymore. Tomorrow we talk." Ronan straightened slowly, his face carefully neutral. Beau was watching him with those two knowing eyes. "Good catch," Ronan murmured, ruffling his son's hair. "Very good catch." The band launched into another song, something slow and romantic that made couples drift toward the dance floor. Ronan watched Laura excuse herself from her conversation and glance toward the bar. Her gaze settled on a man Ronan recognized but couldn't immediately place. Then it clicked. Caleb Dorrance, local real estate developer, maybe 41 or 42. Rich family, owned half the good land around Idaho Falls. Ronan had met him once at a charity function Laura had dragged him to. Now Laura was walking toward Caleb, her smile different than the one she'd been wearing all night. This one was intimate, familiar. They didn't embrace, didn't even touch, but Ronan saw the way Caleb's eyes followed the curve of her neck as she leaned close to whisper something. "Dad," Beau tugged at his sleeve. "Can we go? Please." Ronan made his decision. He stood and helped Beau out of his chair, keeping his movements casual. "You're tired, aren't you? It's been a long day." Beau nodded eagerly, playing along perfectly. They made their way toward Myra's table, where the bride was laughing with her new husband and several relatives. Ronan touched Myra's shoulder gently. "Congratulations again," he said, leaning down to kiss her cheek. "Beau's getting sleepy, so we're going to head out." Myra's smile faltered slightly. "Where's Laura? Isn't she riding with you? She's having fun. I'll text her that we left." Ronan kept his voice light. "She can catch a ride with someone else." "Oh." Myra's eyes darted toward the bar, then back to Ronan. Something flickered across her face, guilt, maybe, or worry. "Okay, thanks for coming." As they walked toward the exit, Ronan caught Walt Rossner's eye across the room. His old army buddy was nursing a beer near the dessert table, looking uncomfortable in his rented tux. Walt raised his eyebrows in a silent question, and Ronan nodded toward the door. Walt understood immediately and started making his own exit. Outside, the Idaho air was crisp and clean after the stuffy reception hall. Ronan buckled Beau into his car's seat, then sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. Walt appeared at the passenger window. "Everything okay?" Walt climbed into the passenger's seat, his weathered face creased with concern. Ronan glanced back at Beau, who was already drooping with exhaustion. "She's cheating," he said quietly, "and she's planning something." Walt's expression hardened. In all their years of friendship, through 2 deployments and countless civilian dramas, Ronan had never been one for exaggeration. "You sure?" "Dead sure." Ronan started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. In his rearview mirror, He could see the reception hall glowing with warm light, full of people celebrating love and new beginnings. Question is, what am I going to do about it? The drive home took 15 minutes, but Ronan's mind covered years of territory. He thought about the night he'd met Lara at a friend's barbecue, how she'd laughed at his dry humor and seemed genuinely interested in his work. He thought about their wedding day, smaller and simpler than tonight's affair, but real in a way that had mattered to him. He thought about the day Beau was born, how Lara had cried when the doctor placed their son in her arms. Had any of it been real, or had he been living with a stranger for 6 years? Beau was asleep by the time they reached the house, a modest two-story on a quiet street lined with old maples. Ronan carried his son upstairs and tucked him into bed, then returned to the living room where Walt was examining the family photos on the mantel. "Nice house," Walt said. "Feels like home." It did. Ronan poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and offered the bottle to Walt, who shook his head. "Now I don't know what it feels like." They sat in the leather chairs Ronan had bought when he got his engineering job at the power plant. Good chairs built to last. Like everything else he chose, they were practical and solid. Unlike his wife, apparently. "Tell me what you saw," Walt said. Ronan described the phone under the table, the text messages, the way Lara had looked at Caleb Dorrance. Walt listened without interrupting, his face growing grimmer with each detail. "The Dorrance family's got money," Walt said when Ronan finished. "Old money. Caleb's mother Pearl owns half the county. If Lara's tangled up with him, she's not just cheating," Ronan finished. "She's trading up." The front door opened, and they heard Lara's heels on the hardwood floor. She appeared in the living room doorway, still beautiful in her green dress, but somehow different now that Ronan knew what to look for. Her smile was too bright, her movements too careful. "You left early," she said, not quite meeting Ronan's eyes. "Beau okay?" "Tired," Ronan replied. "Big day." "Hi, Walt." Lara's voice carried a note of irritation. She'd never liked Walt, thought he was a bad influence from Ronan's military days. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Just catching up," Walt said easily. "Haven't seen this guy in months." Lara's smile grew tighter. "Well, I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed." She kissed Ronan's forehead, a gesture that would have seemed loving an hour ago, but now felt like performance. "Don't stay up too late, boys." They waited until her footsteps faded upstairs. Then Walt leaned forward. "She's nervous." "She should be." Ronan finished his whiskey and set the glass down with deliberate precision. "I need to know how deep this goes. What are you thinking?" Ronan stood and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful street where his neighbors were settling in for the night. Normal people with normal problems, not the kind that required military precision to solve. "I'm thinking," he said slowly, "that if they want to play games, I should know the rules first." Walt left after midnight, but Ronan stayed downstairs. He made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, listening to the house settle around him. Upstairs, Lara was definitely asleep. He could hear her breathing pattern through the ceiling, the same rhythm that had comforted him for years. T2 in the morning. He moved to Lara's home office. She claimed she needed the space for her part-time bookkeeping work, though Ronan had never understood why 3 small clients required a dedicated room with a locking file cabinet. Now he understood better. The computer password was Easy Beau's birthday. Lara had never been creative with security, which had always seemed charming in its innocence. Tonight, that innocence felt calculated. Her email revealed the usual suburban clutter. Newsletters, shopping confirmations, messages from her book club. But her browser history told a different story. Real estate listings in Jackson Hole. Divorce lawyer websites. Articles about asset protection in Idaho. The financial folders made his stomach drop. She'd opened a second bank account 3 months ago. The statements showed regular transfers from their joint account, small amounts that wouldn't trigger automatic alerts. 500 here, 800 there. The balance now sat at $23,000, but worse than the hidden money was what he found in her drafts folder at a prenup modification document, professionally written and ready for a signature. It would change their agreement from equal distribution to a formula that heavily favored Lara, particularly regarding Beau's custody and the house. At the bottom, a note in Lara's handwriting. "Caleb says this protects everyone. Ronan's hands were steady as he opened the last folder, travel documents. June departure, Caleb plus L, contained flight confirmations to Jackson Hole, hotel reservations for 2 weeks, and a rental car agreement. The departure date was June 15th. 3 weeks from now, he copied everything to a flash drive, then carefully restored the computer to exactly how he'd found it. Laura was a light sleeper, but she was also predictable. She'd sleep until 7, shower, make coffee, and spend 20 minutes on her phone before starting her day. He had time. Back in the kitchen, Ronan sat with his second cup of coffee and stared at the flash drive. The little device contained the destruction of his marriage, his family, his carefully built life. But it also contained something else. Ammunition. His phone buzzed with a text message. Laura, stay to help clean up. Home soon. Love you. The timestamp showed she'd sent it 2 hours ago, just after Walt left. 2 hours when she could have been anywhere, doing anything. With anyone. Ronan deleted the message and poured his coffee down the sink. He had work to do. When Laura came home at 4 a.m, Ronan was in bed, breathing deeply and evenly. She slipped under the covers with practiced silence, smelling of wine and something else cologne that definitely wasn't his. He lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling and building plans. Monday morning arrived gray and overcast, matching Ronan's mood perfectly. He dropped Bo at kindergarten with their usual routine backpack check, lunch money, reminder about after-school pickup. But today, everything felt different. Today, he was a single father who just didn't know it why ET work. Ronan's reputation for methodical precision served him well. The Idaho Falls power plant ran on systems and protocols, backup plans, and redundancies. His coworkers trusted his judgment because he never acted without thinking through every angle. Today, he applied that same approach to his personal life. During his lunch break, he drove to First National Bank and opened a new account. The manager, a soft-spoken woman named Janet, walked him through the paperwork with professional discretion. Just need a place to keep some project funds separate, Ronan explained. Engineering work on the side. It wasn't entirely a lie. He did occasional consulting work, small jobs that brought an extra income. But this account would serve a different purpose. By the end of the week, he'd moved $15,000 from their joint savings carefully in amounts that wouldn't trigger automatic notifications to Laura. That afternoon, he made another stop. Tech Pro Solutions occupied a strip mall office between a nail salon and a tax preparer, but their reputation for digital security work was solid. The owner, Marcus Chun, had helped the power plant upgrade their system security 2 years ago. I need monitoring software, Ronan told him directly. For my home devices. Marcus raised an eyebrow, but asked no questions. In his business, discretion was everything. What kind of monitoring? Everything. Texts, emails, location data, browsing history. I need to know what's happening on every device in my house. That's comprehensive. Marcus pulled up a catalog on his computer. Legal issues? Family issues, Ronan said. And before you ask, yes, I own the devices and pay for the service plan. Everything's in my name. The software cost $400 and came with a promise of complete invisibility. Marcus walked him through the installation process on Ronan's own phone first, then provided detailed instructions for the other devices. One thing, Marcus said as Ronan prepared to leave. This kind of surveillance, it changes you, makes you see things differently. You sure you want to go down this road? Ronan thought about Bo asking to leave the wedding, about the text messages under the table, about flight confirmations to Jackson Hole. I'm already down it. I just need to see where it leads. That evening, while Laura showered, Ronan installed the monitoring software on her phone and laptop. The process took less than 5 minutes, and when she emerged from the bathroom, he was reading a technical manual in bed. Good day, she asked, toweling her hair dry. Quiet, he replied. Yours. The usual. Grocery shopping, picked up dry cleaning. She sat on the bed and began applying lotion to her legs. Mira called. She wants to have lunch this week. Talk about the wedding. Ronan nodded and turned a page. Inside, his mind was already parsing this information. Lunch with Mira meant opportunity for private conversation. It meant coordination, possibly planning. That sounds nice, he said. Tell her congratulations again. Wednesday night, Walt came over for dinner. It was a standing arrangement they'd maintained since Ronan's discharge every few weeks. Walt would bring beer and stories from his construction job, and Laura would cook something elaborate to prove she could handle military friends. Tonight, she made pot roast with all the fixings, playing the perfect hostess while Beau chattered about his school day. But Ronan noticed things he'd missed before. How she checked her phone every few minutes. How she excused herself twice to take calls in the kitchen. How she seemed distracted despite her smile. After dinner, while Laura cleaned up, Walt and Ronan sat on the back porch. The monitoring software had been active for 2 days, and the preliminary data was already painting a clear picture. She's texting him constantly, Ronan said quietly. Caleb, sometimes 50 messages a day. What kind of messages? Planning messages. Logistics. And Ronan paused, still adjusting to the reality of it. Love messages. The kind married people send each other. Walt took a long pull from his beer. How long? Based on the message history? At least 6 months. Maybe longer. Ronan watched a neighbor's cat stalking something in the garden. She's been living a completely different life. What's your play? Let them think I'm weak, Ronan said. Let them believe they're smarter than me. I want to see how far they'll go. Walt nodded slowly. In the army, they called it reconnaissance. In force, let the enemy reveal their positions before you committed to attack. You'll need backup, Walt said. This kind of thing, you can't do it alone. I was hoping you'd say that. From inside the house came the sound of Lara's laughter, bright and genuine as she helped Beau with a puzzle. For a moment, Ronan almost wondered if he was making a mistake, if there was some innocent explanation for everything he'd discovered. Then his phone buzzed with an alert from the monitoring software. Laura had just sent a text to Caleb. Walt's here. Can't talk. Missing you. The moment of doubt passed. The next morning, Ronan woke before his alarm and lay quietly beside Laura, watching her sleep. In the gray dawn light, she looked younger, more like the woman he'd married. But appearances had proven unreliable lately, that he made coffee and checked the overnight data from the monitoring software. Laura had been active until nearly midnight, texting with both Caleb and Mira. The conversations revealed a web of planning and coordination that made his chest tight with anger. Laura to Caleb. Ronan's getting suspicious. He was weird at the wedding. Caleb to Laura. Just a few more weeks. We stick to the plan. Laura to Mira. Need to talk today. Private. Mira to Laura. Come early. We'll figure this out. When Laura came downstairs, Ronan was scrambling eggs and humming softly. She stopped in the doorway, surprised. You're up early, she said. Couldn't sleep. He smiled and kissed her cheek, the gesture feeling strange but necessary. Thought I'd make you breakfast. Her smile was confused but pleased. That's sweet. What's the occasion? No occasion. Just felt like taking care of my wife. Over breakfast, he was attentive and affectionate, asking about her day, sharing work stories, making her laugh with observations about their neighbors. It was a performance, but it was based on real memories of better times. Beau watched this display with intelligent eyes, saying little but missing nothing. After Laura left for her lunch with Mira, Ronan walked Beau to the neighborhood playground. The boy was quiet as he climbed the monkey bars, his small face serious. Are you mad at Mommy? Beau asked suddenly. The question hit Ronan like a physical blow. He thought he was hiding his feelings better than that. Why would you think that? Beau hung from the bars, considering his words. You're being different. Nice, but different. I'm just watching, Ronan said finally. Like you did at the wedding. Beau dropped to the ground and brushed off his hands. Are you going to fix it? The faith in his son's voice was humbling. I'm going to try. That afternoon, while monitoring the lunch conversation between Laura and Mira through the phone's microphone, Ronan learned the true scope of what he was facing. The sisters weren't just planning an affair, they were engineering a complete life change. He's been so suspicious since the wedding, Laura said. Asking questions, being extra nice. It's creepy. You're almost there, Mira replied. Caleb's got the lawyer ready, the money moved. Once you file the papers, it'll be over. What if he fights it? He won't. Caleb says men like Ronan don't fight dirty. They play by rules. Ronan turned off the audio feed and sat in his car outside the power plant, hands gripping the steering wheel. They thought he was weak. They thought he was naive. They were counting on his decency to let them destroy him. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Friday evening brought the promised visit from Mira, ostensibly to deliver wedding photos. She arrived with a bottle of wine and that particular smile she wore when she wanted something the same expression she'd used to talk her way out of trouble as a teenager. Ronan was in the garage, organizing tools with military precision, when he heard her car in the driveway. Through the kitchen window, he watched Laura greet her sister with an embrace that seemed more intense than usual. He gave them 30 minutes to get comfortable, then came inside. "Mira, good to see you." He hugged his sister-in-law warmly, noting how she tensed slightly at his touch. "How's married life treating you?" "It's wonderful," she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "James is perfect. That's what everyone deserves," Ronan said, loading meaning into the words. "A perfect partner who's completely honest." Laura poured wine with hands that trembled almost imperceptibly. Ronan accepted a glass, but barely sipped it, while the sisters made quick work of theirs. The wedding photos were spread across the dining room table, professional shots that captured the happiness and elegance of the day. Ronan studied them carefully, noting details he'd missed while living through the actual event. "You can really see the love in these," he said, pointing to a photo of Mira and James during their first dance. "The way he looks at you like you're the only person in the world." Mira refilled her wine glass. "That's what real love looks like. Is it?" Ronan flipped to another photo, this one showing the reception guests. Laura and Caleb were visible in the background, standing closer together than strangers should. Sometimes people think they know what love looks like, but they're really just seeing what they want to see. Lara's laugh came out strained. "You're being philosophical tonight. Wedding photos do that to me." He continued, turning pages. "Make me think about commitment, loyalty, the promises people make." By the third glass of wine, Myra's guard was down. She and Laura were giggling over shared memories, their conversation growing looser and more intimate. Ronan excused himself to check on Beau, but lingered in the hallway, listening. "I still can't believe you're really doing this," Mira said, her words slightly slurred. "It's time," Laura replied. "I can't keep pretending forever." But Ronan seems so, I don't know, different lately. More attentive. That's what makes it perfect. He has no idea what's coming. "Since January, though? You've been planning this since January." Ronan's breath caught. January was when his mother died. The funeral, the grief, Lara's constant support during the worst month of his life. She'd held him while he cried, made all the arrangements, been everything he needed. And all that time, she'd been planning to leave. "It was the best time to start," Laura said. "He was so vulnerable. Grateful for every little thing I did. It made me realize how easy this would be." Ronan closed his eyes and leaned against the wall. The casual cruelty of it hit harder than anger. She'd weaponized his grief, used his mother's death as cover for betrayal. When he returned to the dining room, the sisters were deep in conversation about vacation plans. Neither looked at him directly. "I should probably head home," Mira said eventually. "James will wonder where I am." As she gathered her purse and jacket, wine making her movements loose and careless, she turned to Ronan with a sudden, intense look. "You know what?" she said, gripping his arm. "I think you're a good man. Really good. Lara's lucky to have someone so stable." The words carried weight, like she was trying to tell him something without saying it directly. Or maybe she was just drunk and guilty. "I try to be," he replied. "Sometimes that's all a man can do." After Mira left, Laura was quiet as they cleaned up. She moved around the kitchen with careful precision, avoiding eye contact. "Nice evening," Ronan said finally. She loaded the dishwasher with mechanical efficiency. "I'm tired. Think I'll head to bed. I'll be up in a bit. Want to finish some paperwork." She nodded and kissed his forehead, the same gesture she'd used at the wedding, empty of meaning but rich with habit. Alone in the kitchen, Ronan poured himself a real drink and sat at the table where his family ate breakfast every morning. Around him, the house felt different, like the foundations had shifted slightly out of true, but Ronan was an engineer. He understood structures, stress points, the precise application of force needed to bring something down. IT was time to start building. Saturday morning, Walt arrived at 7 with coffee and donuts, a peace offering that fooled nobody. Laura greeted him coolly and announced she was taking Bo shopping, leaving the two men alone in the garage. "You look like hell," Walt said without preamble. "Feel worse." Ronan selected a wrench from his toolbox and began tightening bolts on his workbench, needing something to do with his hands. "It's bad, Walt. Worse than I thought. Talk to me." Ronan told him about the midnight conversations, Myra's wine-loosened confession, the planning that had started during his mother's funeral. Walt listened without interrupting, his face growing grimmer with each revelation. "That's cold," Walt said finally. "Even for a cheater, that's cold." "I need help," Ronan said, setting down the wrench. "Professional help." Walt nodded slowly. "I might know a guy. Someone from the old days who's good with technical problems." 2 hours later, they were sitting in a coffee shop downtown, waiting for Walt's contact. The man who joined them looked like an accountant, thin, precise, forgettable. He introduced himself as Danny and asked no questions about their situation. "I need deleted messages recovered," Ronan said simply. "From cloud storage, phone backups, whatever you can find." Danny quoted a price that made Ronan wince, but he agreed immediately. This wasn't about money anymore. "How far back you want to go?" Danny asked. "Everything. Start from the beginning and work forward. Might take a few days. This kind of forensic work, you got to be careful not to leave tracks." "I've got time." They arranged to meet again on Tuesday, and Danny melted back into the coffee shop crowd like he'd never been there. "You sure about this?" Walt asked as they walked back to the truck. "Once you see everything, you can't unsee it." Ronan thought about Bo's face at the wedding, the trust in his son's eyes, the way Laura had comforted him after his mother's funeral while planning her exit strategy. "I'm already seeing it," he said. "I just need proof." Sunday dinner was a family tradition Ronan had started when Bo was born, home-cooked meal. No phones, everyone sharing the best part of their week. Tonight felt like a funeral for that tradition. Laura made pot roast again, her second elaborate meal in a week. She was trying too hard, overcompensating for guilt or maybe just buying time. Bo played with his food, sensing the tension despite the adults' careful politeness. "What was the best part of your week, buddy?" Ronan asked, following their usual script. "When you made Mommy breakfast," Bo said after thinking about it. "You were both happy." The innocence of it was devastating. Ronan caught Lara's flinch, the way she suddenly found her plate fascinating. "What about you, Mom?" Bo continued. "What was your best part?" Lara forced a smile. "Seeing Aunt Mira so happy. And spending time with my boys." "Dad." Ronan looked at his son, then at his wife, and made a decision. Learning to see things clearly. Sometimes that's the best gift you can get. Tuesday afternoon, Danny delivered a flash drive that contained 6 months of deleted messages, call logs, and location data. The scope of the betrayal was comprehensive and methodical. January 15th, 3 days after Ronan's mother's funeral. "Caleb, you were amazing today. He has no idea how lucky he is." "Laura, I feel terrible. He's so broken up about his mom." "Caleb, you're giving him what he needs." "That's not terrible." "Laura, I know, but I keep thinking about after." "Caleb, after is going to be beautiful. Just us, no more pretending." March 3 RD. "Laura, talked to the lawyer today. He says if we can show Ronan's unstable, custody won't be an issue." "Caleb, my mother's lawyer is better. More aggressive." "Laura, how do we show he's unstable? He's the most stable person I know." "Caleb, everyone has a breaking point. We just need to find his." April 20th. "Caleb, booked the flights. Jackson Hole, here we come." "Laura, I can't wait. A real life, finally." "Caleb, what about the kid?" "Laura, summers and holidays. Plenty of time for him to adjust to our life." Ronan read every message twice, his mind cataloging the progression from guilt to calculation to casual cruelty. They weren't just planning to leave, they were planning to take everything, including Bo. That night, he called Walt. "What now?" Walt asked. Ronan looked up at the ceiling, toward the bedroom where his wife was probably texting her lover about their bright future together. "Now we give them what they want," he said. "Just not the way they expect." The The plan took shape over the next week like a precision engineering project. Ronan approached it with the same methodical care he used for power plant maintenance: identify critical points, plan for redundancies, test every system before going live. First, he needed documentation that would stand up in court. The monitoring software was useful for intelligence, but inadmissible as evidence. He needed clean, legal proof of Lara's activities. That he hired a private investigator named Sarah Mills, a retired police detective who specialized in domestic cases. Sarah was expensive but thorough, and she understood the importance of proper procedure. I need photographs, financial records, anything that proves infidelity and fraud, Ronan told her during their initial meeting. Everything by the book. How much time do I have? 2 weeks, maybe 3. They're planning to file papers soon. Sarah nodded grimly. That's tight, but doable. Fair warning, though, this kind of surveillance, it gets ugly fast. You sure you want to see all of it? I need to see all of it. Next, he addressed Beau's situation. If Lara and Caleb succeeded in painting him as unstable, custody would become a battlefield. Ronan needed professional documentation of his fitness as a father. He enrolled Beau in sessions with Dr. Patricia Henley, a child psychologist who came highly recommended. Ostensibly, the sessions were to help Beau process the changes he'd been sensing at home. In reality, they created a paper trail showing Ronan's proactive concern for his son's well-being. Beau is remarkably well-adjusted, Dr. Henley told him after the 3rd session. He clearly feels secure in his relationship with you. Whatever's happening at home, you're doing a good job protecting him from it. I'm trying, Ronan said. His happiness is everything to me. That comes through. Children can sense authenticity. The financial aspect required delicate handling. Ronan needed to protect assets without appearing to hide them. He consulted with Ellen Rodriguez, a family attorney who specialized in high-conflict divorces. If your wife files first, she'll control the narrative, Ellen warned, especially if she claims abuse or instability. What if I file first? Better position, but risky if you don't have solid evidence. Idaho's no fault, but adultery and financial misconduct still matter for custody and property division. Ronan showed her printouts of the financial records, carefully edited to remove references to his illegal monitoring. Ellen's eyebrows rose steadily as she read. This is comprehensive fraud, she said finally. If you can prove it legally, you'll have significant leverage. Working on that. Meanwhile, the monitoring software continued providing real-time intelligence on Lara's activities. The affair was accelerating, growing bolder as the planned departure date approached. Caleb was pressuring her to file papers soon, while Lara seemed increasingly nervous about Ronan's recent attentiveness. Caleb, he suspects something. We need to move faster. Lara, I'm scared. What if he fights it? Caleb, then we make him look like someone who shouldn't have custody. My mother's lawyer knows how to handle these things. Lara, I don't want to hurt him. I just want out. Caleb, sometimes you have to hurt people to save yourself. The casual cruelty of it still hit Ronan like a physical blow, but anger was becoming a useful tool. It sharpened his focus, steadied his hands, made the necessary deceptions easier to maintain at home. He continued playing the role of devoted husband. He brought Lara flowers, planned a family hiking trip, talked about summer vacation as if their family would still exist by then. The performance was exhausting but necessary. Beau seemed to sense the undercurrents but trusted his father's handling of the situation. During their bedtime routine, he would sometimes ask careful questions. Is everything okay, Dad? Everything's going to be okay, Ronan would promise. Sometimes grown-ups have problems, but I'm fixing them. Are you and Mom getting divorced? The direct question caught Ronan off guard. What makes you ask that? Tommy at school, his parents got divorced. His mom moved away, and now he only sees her sometimes. Ronan sat on the bed and chose his words carefully. Some families change shape, buddy. But no matter what happens, you and I are always going to be together. That's a promise. Beau nodded solemnly. I like being with you. I like being with you too. The setup required precise timing. Ronan needed witnesses, documentation, and enough apparent provocation to make his reaction seem organic. The neighborhood barbecue on Memorial Day weekend provided the perfect opportunity. The Hendersons always threw the biggest party on the block, complete with grilled everything and enough beer to float a small boat. Most importantly, Mira would be there with her new husband, along with several other families who knew Ronan as the quiet, stable engineer who never caused problems. Ronan spent the morning of the party making final preparations. He planted small stress indicators throughout the day, misplacing his keys, getting frustrated with a minor home repair, snapping at a telemarketer. Nothing dramatic, just enough to establish a pattern of mounting tension. Laura noticed but seemed relieved rather than concerned. A stressed Ronan was easier to leave than a happy one. "You seem wound up," she said as they got ready for the party. "Everything okay?" "Just work stuff," he replied, adjusting his tie with slightly more force than necessary. "The plant's having issues with the new turbine system. Maybe you should stay home. Rest." "No, I promised Jim we'd be there. Besides, I could use the distraction." The party was in full swing when they arrived. Kids ran through sprinklers while adults clustered around picnic tables, cold drinks sweating in the warm afternoon air. Ronan accepted a beer and joined the usual group of neighborhood men discussing sports and local politics. He waited until Mira started live streaming on social media, her phone capturing the festive atmosphere for her followers. The perfect documentation. The trigger came when Caleb Dorrance arrived. That he wasn't supposed to be there, had no connection to the neighborhood or the Hendersons. But there he was, confident and smiling, accepting Jim Henderson's introduction as a friend of Myra's. Ronan watched Lara's face light up when she saw Caleb, watched her find excuses to drift closer to where he stood with a group of strangers. The casual intimacy of it, performed in front of their neighbors and son, was the final straw, but not yet. Timing was everything. Ronan continued his conversations, accepted another beer, helped Jim flip burgers on the grill. To anyone watching, he seemed normal, maybe slightly tense, but nothing unusual for a man dealing with work stress. The moment came when Laura and Caleb found themselves alone by the dessert table, thinking they were unobserved. Caleb's hand brushed hers as he reached for a brownie, and Laura smiled in response to the same intimate smile she'd once given Ronan. "Having a good time." Ronan appeared beside them, his voice carefully neutral. Laura startled slightly. "Ronan, this is Caleb, Myra's friend. We've met," Ronan said, extending his hand to Caleb. "Good to see you again." Caleb's handshake was firm, confident. "Enjoying the party. Great neighborhood you have here." "It is. Very close-knit. Everyone knows everyone else's business." Ronan smiled, but his eyes were cold. Hard to keep secrets in a place like this. Something in his tone made Caleb's expression shift slightly. "I suppose that's true anywhere." "Not anywhere," Ronan disagreed. "Some places, people can live double lives for months. Years, even. But eventually, the truth comes out." Lara's face had gone pale. "Ronan, what are you?" "Just making conversation." He turned back to Caleb. "What line of work are you in again?" "Real estate development." "Ah. Building new things, tearing down old ones." Ronan nodded thoughtfully. "Must be satisfying reshaping people's lives like that." The conversation was attracting attention now. Other guests were glancing over, sensing tension without understanding its source. "Perfect. I should probably—" Caleb began. "Stay," Ronan said firmly. "I'd love to hear more about your work, particularly your recent projects." Laura placed a warning hand on his arm. "Honey, maybe we should." Ronan shook off her touch, the gesture sharp enough to make nearby conversations pause. "Don't touch me." The words came out louder than intended, cutting through the party noise. Heads turned, including Myra's phone camera. "Ronan, please," Laura whispered, but her plea only fueled his carefully constructed rage. "Please what?" His voice rose another notch. "Please keep pretending? Please keep playing along with your games? I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" Ronan's laugh was bitter and loud. 6 months, Laura. 6 months you've been lying to my face." The party had gone quiet now, guests forming a loose circle around the unfolding drama. Ronan could see Mira in his peripheral vision, phone still recording, her face a mask of shock and guilt. "You're drunk," Laura said desperately. "You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly." Ronan grabbed an empty beer bottle from the table and hurled it against the Hendersons' oak tree. The crash was sharp and final, punctuating his words. For the first time in months, I'm seeing everything exactly as it is. Caleb took a step backward, his confident demeanor cracking. Maybe I should leave. Yes, Ronan agreed, turning toward him with predatory focus. You should. You should leave my neighborhood, my wife alone, and my family the hell alone. Ronan. Jim Henderson pushed through the crowd, hands raised peacefully. Hey, buddy, let's take a breath here. I'm fine, Jim. Ronan's voice was deadly calm now, more frightening than his previous shouting. Just tired of being played for a fool. He looked around the circle of shocked faces, his gaze lingering on Lara's tear-streaked cheeks and Myra's terrified expression. Then he turned and walked away, leaving silence in his wake. Bo was waiting by the gate, his small hand already reaching for his father's. Can we go home now, Dad? Yeah, buddy, Ronan said, his voice gentle again. Let's go home. As they walked away, he could hear the explosion of conversation behind them, the rapid-fire questions and speculation that would spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. By tomorrow, everyone would know that quiet, stable Ronan Hayes had finally snapped that IT was exactly what Lara and Caleb needed to hear. The restraining order arrived on Tuesday morning, served by a sheriff's deputy who looked embarrassed to be there. Ronan accepted the papers calmly, offered the officer coffee, and read through the allegations with the dispassionate attention he usually reserved for technical specifications. According to the document, he was volatile, possibly alcoholic, and had threatened Caleb Dorrance with physical violence. Lara claimed to fear for her safety and Bo's well-being. She requested temporary custody, immediate possession of the family home, and emergency financial support. That IT was a masterwork of legal fiction, supported by witness statements and video evidence of his breakdown at the barbecue. Someone had done their homework. Everything in order? The deputy asked. Perfectly, Ronan replied, folding the papers with precise creases. Thank you for your service. After the deputy left, Ronan called Ellen Rodriguez and scheduled an emergency meeting. Then he called his supervisor at the power plant and requested personal leave. Finally, he called Detective Nolan Harps. The detective was a weathered man in his late 40s who'd worked the Idaho Falls beat for 20 years. Ronan had met him during a flood rescue 5 years ago, when the Clark Fork River jumped its banks and threatened the eastern neighborhoods. Ronan's engineering background had helped coordinate the evacuation, and Harps had never forgotten the favor. Heard you had some excitement this weekend, Harps said when Ronan arrived at the station. Word travels fast. Small town. Plus your wife filed a complaint. Harps gestured to a chair across from his desk. Want to tell me your side? Ronan opened his briefcase and removed a thick folder. I want to tell you the truth. For the next 2 hours, he laid out everything. The timeline of the affair, the financial fraud, the custody manipulation plan. He showed Harps the legally obtained evidence, Sarah Mills' photographs, bank records, the messages Danny had recovered from cloud storage. Harps listened without interrupting, his expression growing grimmer with each revelation. This is comprehensive, he said finally, but some of it's circumstantial. Adultery's not a crime, and the financial stuff could be explained away. Keep reading. The final section of the folder contained the evidence that transformed everything. Among the recovered messages, Danny had found communications between Caleb and his mother's attorney discussing something called Project Homestead. The plan was breathtaking in its scope. Pearl Dorrance owned several properties in financial distress, including a failed development outside Jackson Hole. By transferring ownership to Lara post-divorce, then claiming the properties as homestead exemptions, they could shield millions in assets from creditors and tax obligations that Ronan's engineering mind had spotted the pattern immediately. The divorce wasn't just personal, it was the keystone of a larger fraud scheme. Wire fraud, Harps said, reading the messages. Conspiracy. Tax evasion. He looked up at Ronan with new respect. How long have you known about this? 2 weeks. I needed to be sure before I acted. Smart man. Harps closed the folder. What do you want from me? Justice, Ronan said simply. And my son. That afternoon, while Lara was meeting with her attorney to finalize the divorce papers, federal agents raided Pearl Dorrance's office. The timing wasn't coincidental. Ronan had provided detailed schedules of everyone's movements, allowing law enforcement to coordinate their actions for maximum impact. Caleb was arrested at his real estate office, charged with multiple counts of financial fraud. Pearl followed 2 hours later, her protests of innocence falling on deaf ears as agents seized boxes of evidence. Laura learned about the arrests while sitting in her lawyer's conference room, reviewing settlement terms that would never be implemented. Her phone buzzed with frantic calls from Mira, from Caleb's associates, from reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of the story. She called Ronan immediately. "What did you do?" Her voice was shrill with panic. "I protected my family," Ronan replied calmly. "Something I should have done months ago." "Ronan, please, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. I know about Jackson Hole. I know about the money. I know about Project Homestead." Each revelation hit like a physical blow, and he could hear her sharp intake of breath. "Most importantly, I know about January." The line went quiet for a long moment. "Using my mother's funeral to plan your escape," Ronan continued, his voice deadly soft. "That was a mistake, Laura. That made it personal. I never meant." "Yes, you did. You meant all of it." He looked out the window at Bo playing in the backyard, oblivious to the storm breaking around him. "See you in court." The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for Friday morning in Judge Patricia Warren's courtroom. Warren had a reputation for fairness, but little patience for games or manipulation. She'd seen too many families destroyed by greed and selfishness to have sympathy for either. Laura arrived with her attorney, Martin Kessler, and a carefully constructed narrative of domestic instability. They had witness statements from the barbecue, photos of the broken bottle, even a psychological evaluation suggesting that Ronan's military background made him prone to violent outbursts. Ronan sat alone at the plaintiff's table, having declined Ellen Rodriguez's offer to attend. He wanted to handle this himself. "Your Honor," Kessler began, "my client lives in fear of her husband's increasingly erratic behavior. The Memorial Day incident was merely the latest in a pattern of intimidation and control." Judge Warren listened impassively as Kessler painted Ronan as a ticking time bomb, unstable and dangerous. The performance was polished and persuasive, supported by carefully selected evidence. When it was Ronan's turn to speak, he stood slowly and placed his own folder on the podium. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence showing that this entire proceeding is part of a criminal conspiracy to defraud the court and manipulate custody proceedings." Warren's eyebrows rose. "That's a serious allegation, Mr. Hayes." "Yes, ma'am, it is." For the next hour, Ronan methodically dismantled Lara's case. He presented the financial evidence, the conspiracy communications, the proof of long-term planning. He showed how the custody battle was designed to support a larger fraud scheme, with Bo as collateral damage. But the centerpiece of his presentation was a recording Vicky Kepler had made. Vicky owned the most popular bakery in Idaho Falls, a position that made her privy to every piece of gossip in town. She was also one of Ronan's oldest friends, someone who'd watched him navigate single parenthood during Lara's frequent business trips. The recording captured Mira in an unguarded moment, drunk on wine and guilt, confessing everything to someone she thought was a sympathetic friend. "Lara's been planning this since January." Myra's voice filled the courtroom. She said it was perfect timing, with his mom dying and him being so grateful for every little thing. Made it easier to set everything up without him noticing. "That's illegal surveillance." Kessler objected. "No, sir," Ronan replied calmly. "That's a confession freely given to a friend. Ms. Kepler will testify that Ms. Vaughn volunteered this information without prompting." Judge Warren studied the evidence with the thoroughness of someone who'd seen every possible variation of human deception. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "I've seen many things in this courtroom, but I've rarely seen a case of such calculated manipulation." She looked directly at Laura, who had gone pale and shaken during Ronan's presentation. "Ms. Hayes, do you have anything to say in response to these allegations?" Lara's attorney whispered urgently in her ear, but she pushed him away. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said, her voice barely audible. I just wanted out. By destroying your husband's reputation and manipulating custody of your child. Ah, yes. The admission hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Judge Warren's ruling was swift and comprehensive. Full custody to Ronan, with supervised visitation for Laura pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. The restraining order was dismissed as fraudulent. All marital assets were frozen pending a thorough accounting. Mr. Hayes, Warren said as the session concluded, I want to commend you for bringing this matter to the court's attention. It takes courage to fight back against this kind of systematic deception. Thank you, Your Honor. I did it for my son. That's clear, and that's why you won. The fallout was swift and merciless. Caleb's arrest had triggered a federal investigation into the Dorrance family's business dealings, revealing decades of tax evasion, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Pearl's attempts to distance herself from her son's activities failed when investigators found her fingerprints on every aspect of Project Homestead. Myra's involvement, while less criminal, was professionally devastating. Her lifestyle blog lost sponsorships overnight when the custody hearing transcript went public. The image she'd cultivated of perfect sister supporting perfect marriage crumbled under the weight of recorded confessions and court testimony. James, her husband of 3 weeks, filed for annulment citing fraud and misrepresentation. The fairy tale wedding that had started everything became a cautionary tale about the difference between appearance and reality. But the most satisfying reversal involved the prenup modification Laura had prepared. Ellen Rodriguez's investigation revealed that Laura had forged Ronan's signature on preliminary documents, intending to claim they'd been executed during his grief over his mother's death. The forgery transformed property division from a negotiation into a rout. Not only did Laura lose claim to any assets, but her criminal behavior voided the original prenup entirely. Ronan gained full ownership of their home, cars, and savings, while Laura faced potential charges for document fraud. The Jackson Hole property that was supposed to be their romantic hideaway was seized by federal agents as evidence in the Dorrance investigation. The flights, hotels, and new life that Laura and Caleb had planned so carefully became exhibits in a criminal trial done on Wednesday afternoon, a week after the custody hearing. Ronan received a call from Detective Harps. Thought you'd want to know, Harps said. Caleb Dorrance pled guilty this morning. 15 years federal time, full restitution. His mother got 12 years. What about Laura? Depends on how cooperative she is. The feds want a money trail, and she's the only one who knows where everything went. Smart lawyer would advise full cooperation. Ronan hung up and walked into the backyard, where Bo was building an elaborate fort with Walt's help. The afternoon sun cast everything in golden light, making the ordinary scene feel precious. How's it looking out here? Ronan asked. Pretty good, Bo replied seriously. Walt says we need better defenses, though. Always good to be prepared. Ronan settled onto the grass beside them. How was school today? Jeremy asked if you're going to jail like Caleb. Bo continued placing blocks with careful precision. I told him no, because you're not a bad guy. What did you tell him about Mommy? Bo paused in his building. That sometimes people make mistakes, but that doesn't make them all bad. Just confused. The wisdom of it hit Ronan unexpectedly. At 5 years old, his son had found a way to process betrayal without letting it poison his heart. That's exactly right, Ronan said. Very wise. Vicky brought pie, Walt announced, changing the subject with military precision. Apple cinnamon. Says it's a celebration. Were we celebrating? Truth winning, Bo said simply. That's what Vicky said. Truth won. 2 weeks later, on a clear Saturday evening, Ronan and Bo sat in the backyard around a small fire. The folder of evidence that had destroyed Lara's plans sat on the ground between them, thick with the weight of betrayal and calculation. Are we really going to burn it? Bo asked, poking at the fire with a stick. Every page, Ronan confirmed. We don't need it anymore. Will it make you feel better? Ronan considered the question seriously. The rage that had sustained him through the investigation and trial had faded, replaced by something cooler and more permanent. Not anger, exactly, but a crystalline clarity about who people really were beneath their masks. I think it will, he said finally. Sometimes you have to destroy the bad things to make room for good ones. He picked up the first folder, the financial records, showing Lara's hidden account and secret transfers. The pages caught fire quickly, flames consuming months of deception in seconds. Next came the text messages, thousands of them chronicling the affair and the conspiracy. Watching them burn felt like exorcism, each page releasing him from the weight of knowing how comprehensively he'd been betrayed. The photographs were last images of Lara and Caleb together, evidence of a relationship that had thrived in the shadows of his trust. These he fed to the flames slowly, watching faces disappear into ash and ember. "Is it over now?" Bo asked, echoing his question from weeks earlier. "For us, yes," Ronan replied, echoing his own response. For them, it's just beginning. Lara was facing 5 years in federal prison if she chose not to cooperate with investigators. Caleb would spend the next decade behind bars, his real estate empire divided among creditors and victims. Mira had moved back in with her parents, her influencer career and marriage both casualties of her involvement in the conspiracy. But their consequences were no longer Ronan's concern. He'd protected what mattered: his son, his integrity, his future. Everything else was noise. "Dad," Bo's voice was thoughtful. "Are you going to get married again?" The question caught Ronan off guard. "I don't know. Maybe someday." "What? If you do, can I help pick her?" Ronan laughed, the sound genuine for the first time in months. "Absolutely. You got good instincts about people." "I know." Bo poked the fire again, sending sparks spiraling into the darkening sky. "I think you should pick someone nice. Someone who doesn't lie." "That sounds like a good plan." They sat in comfortable silence as the last of the evidence turned to ash. Around them, the neighborhood was settling into evening routines, dinners, and homework, and the small rituals that made life feel normal. Walt appeared around the corner of the house, carrying a cooler and wearing the satisfied expression of someone who'd helped justice prevail. "Brought beer," he announced, settling into the third chair. "And root beer for the kid." "What's the occasion?" Ronan asked. "Friday," Walt said simply. "Good weather, good company, bad guys in jail. What more you need?" Vicky arrived 20 minutes later with fresh pie and the kind of smile that said she'd been waiting all week to celebrate properly. She played a crucial role in exposing the conspiracy, and her bakery had become unofficial headquarters for everyone who'd supported Ronan through the crisis. "How does it feel?" she asked, settling onto the grass with characteristic disregard for her clean clothes. "Different," Ronan said honestly. "I'm different." And he was. The man who'd trusted blindly, who believed that good intentions were enough to protect what mattered, was gone. In his place sat someone harder, more careful, but not bitter. Experience had sharpened him without breaking him. Bo fell asleep in his chair as the adults talked, his small body finally relaxed in a way it hadn't been for months. Ronan carried him inside and tucked him into bed, pausing to study his son's peaceful face. "Sleep tight, buddy," he whispered. "Everything's going to be okay now." When he returned to the backyard, the fire had burned down to glowing coals. Walt and Vicky were discussing baseball with the comfortable rhythm of old friends, and for the first time since the wedding, Ronan felt something like peace that he'd kept his promises. He'd protected his son. He'd made sure the truth came out, no matter the cost. The quiet man they'd thought they could manipulate and discard had proven more dangerous than any of them imagined. Not because he'd become violent or cruel, but because he'd become absolutely ruthless in defense of what he loved. And he had no regrets about any of it. As the evening deepened and his friends' voices created a soundtrack of safety and belonging, Ronan Hayes smiled into the darkness and began planning the rest of his life. It would be a good life, built on truth instead of lies, protected by vigilance instead of faith. That would be exactly what he and Bo deserved.